Sheil Kapadia of The Ringer, just like old times. Welcome back, Sheil.
I know. I feel like I should be getting ready with the game prediction. You know, we're going to be talking about is the offense Jalen Hurts or Kellen Moore, but I guess it's a different year. It's the off season, so I don't have to worry about all that.
Well, I got an important question first, Sheil.
Okay.
Are you okay with the intro music now?
Oh, yeah, it's different.
I'm okay because I figured you guys put thought into it and you wanted to save the other one for in-season hits only. So if we have a standing off-season one,
it's not coming back.
Good with me.
It's not coming back. I campaigned for this song for months.
Okay.
Yeah, Spike, Spike got this song on here. It's not leaving.
Yeah. But I made the agreement. They were like, I think it was midway through the playoffs. I was like, why isn't the song coming? They were like, wait till after the playoffs. We got to win the Super Bowl first, which we did. And it has been.
Jack said that.
Yes, it has been a while. How old a guy are you now? No, it's just been a couple of months. So you know, really, we haven't talked to you about the offseason at all. It has been even though the Eagles have explained it and analysts have explained it, it has been sort of a stunning offseason for the Eagles, given the number of players that they've lost and the fact that they haven't really replaced any of them in a player-for-player sort of way. They've signed a bunch of guys. Excuse me. They've signed a bunch of guys, but all those guys seem like, you know, lottery tickets in some way.
Yeah, I would agree with that. A bunch of dart throws. I think going into the offseason, like you said, we all sort of knew, all right, they're going to lose some guys, but you wondered, all right, is there a big trade up their sleeve? Is there, hey, just one signing that they're going to make? And instead of that, you know, you're able to bring Zach Bond back. But I think, honestly, the most stunning move of the offseason was probably the Chauncey Gardner-Johnson trade. I don't think anyone was really predicting them to go to those lengths to save a little money and reshape their defense. So it's not panic time. They're still the favorites to win the Super Bowl if you look at the sports books, but I think it makes this draft probably maybe even more important than we thought it was going to be a few months ago.
Well, and that's sort of my question on this is, do you go into this draft? Do you think the Eagles are going into this draft saying we need like multiple starters out of this draft because they lose Sweat, they lose Milton Williams, who wasn't a starter, but you know, for all intents and purposes, starter type snaps. They lose Slay, they lose CJ GJ, who you mentioned. Nakobe Dean's not going to be there when the season starts. They lose Becton. Do you think they go into this draft thinking we have to get like a number of real true contributors to this year's team?
I think the way Howie Roseman looks at it is he tries to put together a roster that, hey, if you need to play a game right now, 2 weeks before the draft, you can go line up and you have guys, some guys you're not sure of, but you have enough guys to put out there where you feel okay about it. In other words, you sort of set the floor the best you can at every position. And then you go into the draft and you say, hey, if we can draft over some of those guys we're not sure about, let's go ahead and do that. So, yeah, I think ideally if they could get 2 starters out of this draft and it could be as fruitful as last year's draft was, they would love to do that. Now, last year's draft doesn't always happen, so I think that's going to be challenging. What to me is most interesting is that this is a team coming off a Super Bowl victory, and there are probably like 8 spots where you could say they could draft someone over a guy who's there right now. You know, offensively, you could certainly say it at right guard. You could maybe say it about tight end if they move on from Dallas Goedert. You could say it about wide receiver 3 with Jahan Dotson. And then defensively, you could say it on pretty much every level. I mean, you could draft a defensive tackle who starts right away, an edge rusher, a linebacker, a safety, a corner. So to me, that's the unusual part where you say, you know, you don't have to necessarily force a position and say, we got to get this guy because he can play right away. At the same time, when we get to the summer and August in training camp, I do think there are going to be a lot of spots up for grabs. And they showed us last year, specifically on defense, that they're willing to play the rookies right away if those guys show that they're capable.
Sheil, what do you think the likelihood of? Because we all know they need help on defense, and there are a lot more holes to fill there, like you said, at all 3 levels. But you mentioned the position there I think would catch some people off guard, although it would make some others excited. And I'm thinking about that tight end position. 32 is a good spot. It's almost like a high second-round pick for a tight end because it's late in the first round. I'm wondering, you think the Eagles would consider a tight end in that first round? And I know Tyler Warren is up there as a higher draft pick. Would you go up to get him, or B, is there a tight end you could see somewhere sort of late in there in that first round that the Eagles could be interested in?
It's possible. I think more likely might be day two, but like you said, if you trade back a little bit, it could still be a top 50 pick. I mean, if you're looking at the strength of this draft, I think tight end is right up there with almost any position. Now, a guy like Tyler Warren from Penn State, there's the Michigan kid, Colston Loveland. I think those guys are probably going to be taken at a spot where it's kind of too high for you to even trade up because you're going to have to give up quite a bit. I mean, I think those guys could very well go in like the top 20 there. So I think more likely than not, you say, hey, who are some of these guys on day two? There's a tight end out of Miami who is really interesting where whenever you see the Cam Ward highlights who's going to go number one overall, he's the guy that he's throwing to. So, yeah, usually in the past, they had Brent Selleck and they drafted Zach Ertz early. They didn't have to think about it. It wasn't an emergency situation. They had Zach Ertz. They drafted Dallas Goedert. They didn't wait till Zach Ertz was off the team. Well, this is a sort of different situation where, and again, Goddard's still on the team, so who knows how that plays out. But if Goddard ends up not being on the team, then, yeah, I think that's a position where second round, third round, you draft a guy who you really like and hope that he can come in and play right away.
Now, when you brought up, you mentioned moving up to somewhere in the 20s would be a little bit too rich. Now, you think are you saying that's too rich for a tight end, or do you think that's what it would cost to move up in the 20s for another player would be too rich for the Eagles? You believe the Eagles would move up if there was a defensive end or maybe a defensive tackle they wanted in the 20s somewhere?
I think if there's a pass rusher who they love and that guy starts to fall, that would be the position. I still think they care about positional value in the draft, and you look at how the defense is built and the guys they lost. Yeah, I think that would be the position where you say, hey, they're going to make a big swing. And I don't know who the player would be. I think a lot of those guys could go early, and then, some of them might be available. What they like to do or what they've done in past years is it's kind of a small trade up where you're going up, 2, 3, 4, 5 spots, and then you try to get back draft picks in the second or third round. So I think that's probably more likely given some of the holes that they need to fill. But, yeah, if you told me, hey, they're going to make a big swing in the first round, I would think the position would be either edge rusher or defensive tackle.
The trading, especially if you're trading other picks from this year, I'm a big move-up guy. But, man, they need so many players. I've been, and most people here haven't been. And in Philadelphia, everybody's very happy with the Super Bowl. And this happened after the last one where every move they make is it must be the right thing. They've lost so many players. And the draft is, I know they've been successful recently, but it's not, the draft isn't a thing where you can count on being as successful as they've been. And I just I've put myself in the camp of more picks better than less picks. Take more players rather than less players. And the move up, that the cost to get into the teens or something like that seems so high from a draft capital standpoint. It makes me a little nervous.
Yeah, I think you're right, especially in this draft. It's not even the teams that are picking in the top 10. You look at some of these guys and you're like, wait, these are the guys going in the top 10 this year? This guy has an injury history. This guy's undersized. It's really not one of those drafts where you say, all right, there are a bunch of guys you could say, hey, if they slip, this is the time to trade up. So I think you're right about that. They've talked about, hey, we have to sign a bunch of these rookies, or not rookies, but guys we've drafted in the last 3 years. They're going to become very expensive. Well, what's the way to supplement those guys on the roster? It's to have new guys on rookie contracts. What's the best way to do that? You have a lot of picks. You're not going to hit on all of them. And you hope that you can find enough success stories that you're able to supplement the roster that way.
Sheil, have you done a mock, and is there a player, let's say that the Eagles are picking 32 around 32, is there somebody that you have sort of dialed in on who you think might be a good fit, who might be there when they're picking?
Yeah, there are a couple of guys who I kind of have my eye on. One of them is Walter Nolan, the defensive tackle out of Ole Miss. Like we just talked about, Andrew. That is an area that they could absolutely address. And so he's somebody who, it was kind of hit or miss a little bit last year. You look at his 10 best plays and you say, wow, this guy should be a top 15 pick. And then you watch a little bit more and you say, okay, I can see it's not as consistent. But he's a guy if you're swinging for upside and say, hey, the best version of this guy could be a really special player. I think he would really interest them. So he's a guy I have an eye on there to see if he falls. And then the other one, you go back to the Georgia well, and I don't think it's the ideal position they would like to draft, but there's a safety from Georgia named Malachi Stark, who to me seems like a really clean prospect who can come in, replace Chauncey Gardner-Johnson right away, high IQ type player, played as a freshman right away at Georgia, a 3-year starter who I think is a really good player. So just looking at it, hey, who could be there, who could interest them, those are two of the guys that I kind of had my eye on.
Yeah, it should be an interesting night for the Eagles. Our big nightmare, as it is every draft when they're picking lower, is that we do this huge draft show on draft night and they trade out of the first round and we just go we go home with our hands in our pockets.
That's right. Last time they won the Super Bowl, right? Dallas Goedert in the second round.
Yep.
They trade out of 32. Lamar Jackson goes 32. And quite honestly, that's something to keep an eye on. You know, the quarterbacks are not great in this draft. However, if you're a team that likes one of these quarterbacks and they're still available at 32, you're incentivized to trade into the first round because it gives you that fifth-year option where now all of a sudden you have that quarterback for an extra year. If he hits, he's going to be cheaper for you on the fifth year, whereas if you're a second or third round pick, you only have him under contract for 4 years. So that's always something to keep an eye on when you have the 32nd overall pick in the first round is, hey, one of these quarterbacks, does a team fall in love and say, hey, we want to get back up there into the first round, and now you trade back and you maybe get another extra pick on day 2. Now, for content, for you guys doing the big draft show, I hope that doesn't happen. But from an Eagles perspective, it's something to keep an eye on for sure.
Listen, I wouldn't mind if the Giants wanted to get up there to 32 to get Jalen Milrose in that first round.
And we get something out of that.
And we get something out of that, yeah. And the Eagles give the Giants a chance to take Jalen Milrose in the first round.
Yeah, it could make sense. And in some of these, Shedeur Sanders, I don't think is going to be there at 32, but there's some uncertainty with basically every quarterback other than Cam Ward. There's the quarterback from Ole Miss, Jackson Dart.
Yep.
You look at some of the draft analysts out there, they say he's going to go in the first round, where a month ago, no one would have said he's going in the first round. So this always happens with quarterbacks. Teams start to get desperate. The quarterbacks get pushed up the board a little bit, and you might have an opportunity to capitalize on that if you're a team like the Eagles that already has your quarterback in place.
All right, Sheil. You can read Sheil at The Ringer or listen to the Philly Special podcast wherever you get your podcast. We appreciate it, buddy.
Appreciate it, brother.
Right, talk to you soon. Take care.
There he is, Sheil Kapadia of The Ringer.